Hey there, it is time for us to get our information out for what's been happening in the Athens area and Oconee County market, as we always look at those two areas to give us a little bit of our understanding. And going back to the end of last month and today, I kind of did a deep dive into some information because there's a lot of things going on that are not just real estate related that are happening in our economy and that are really starting to people are asking questions of us and going to have try to be as informed as we can. Quickly, I'm going to try to go through the typical numbers. Then there's some stuff at the end regarding inflation that I'd like to talk about. So let's just look at what we always do. We go year to date, last 3 years, and total new listings. What I'm really comparing as usual right now is 2019 to 2021 because those were 2019 was a more normal year. And the amount of listings is actually on par within three as of year to date, but it's a little interesting because we're lagging behind now. And then the under contracts are actually a little bit ahead at 1,451, 4% above. And then the sold price, as the story, as all of you know, huge value gains, 17% equity gain in those two counties since 2019 at 340. And then the total homes sold, this is what's interesting. We have almost 8% more homes sold in 2021 with the same amount of listings. So that's telling us a little bit about our market and how these things have been going very fast. But this is where I'm a little disappointed. As I've alluded to, I wanted more listings as a broker to see maybe some normalization in the market. But let's compare 2019 new listings in October, 195 to 162 this October. So we're actually 17% behind a normal October of the fall of 2019. Under contracts, amazingly, are up 24% versus October in 2019. And then we're about on par with the homes sold. So, and of course, there we are, huge equity gain, which I'll get back to it, around 360 from 266. Now, keep in mind, that's just for the month of October. So, not having the listings come to market versus the normal same time last year is where there's a little bit of remain tightness in the market. While we have seen the amount of buyers cool down, what we haven't seen is a swell of listings to really to change things that much. We're still seeing lower price properties really escalate quickly. We are seeing a little bit of a stall in the really high price properties and nothing coming down, but just as much as 300,000 isn't going to move as fast as 800,000 in the price appreciation. Now, this is the next graph that I really want to go into. And what I did was I took a look at year over year appreciation in Clarke and Oconee County, and then getting a few sources on inflation rates over the last 5 years. Now, these inflation rates of the past years might vary depending on your source, but the important thing to note is the big difference that we're seeing. Going back to 2016, the blue is Clarke County. We had an almost 7%, which just a little bit below 5% year over year property appreciation. Inflation was way down. As we go into 2017, we're back above 5%. What a typical great thing to see is property value gaining value at a normal appreciation rate. 2018, we saw some bigger jumps. Clarke County we actually fell behind. Oconee County saw more year-over-year appreciation at almost 9%. Then we go to 2019. Keep in mind, this red bar has been pretty low the whole time. We're right there about the same clip, but Clarke and Oconee reversed. Clarke went up to about 9% in 2019, whereas Oconee fell back down to closer to 5. Traditionally, Oconee County would appreciate, but much slower than Clarke just because of the more availability of land. And in 2020, we saw Clarke continue to go a little above 7% inflation. As for the whole year, we actually saw that really elevate really quickly at the end of the year, but that's the year as a whole. And then we saw about 5% in 2020. If you remember, we were seeing really big numbers at the end of the year. That's going back from, what happened. This is where we've seen these numbers are going to be upsetting and good depending on which way you look at it. So as you can see, let me move my head a little bit. Clarke County has seen over 15% appreciate, 17% appreciation this year, and then Oconee is right behind it at about 13%. And here's the other bad thing. This red number is creeping up. Right now, we've got inflation this year is up about 5.5, 5.7%. This is not political. It's just a fact of what everybody's dealing with. So there's some negatives to take away from this with inflation. And then there's the negative to sit there as a home buyer and say the affordability of housing. There's a pro to take away from this as sellers have seen huge equity gains. And that has helped them increase what they can sell their house for, access to cash. So there's positives and negatives. But the thing I want you to focus on here is if we're in an inflationary climate, which we are, seems to be factual, maybe that'll release a little bit once we see the supply lines or something like that change. But in all of these scenarios, what stayed way ahead of inflation? It was real estate. It was real estate ahead of inflation by a long shot. And even in this times, the value of real estate has gone up way ahead of our inflation rate. Now, the cost of living going up is not a good thing because that affects a lot of people. But it's also important for you to have things in mind. We have a lot of questions from people that just seem uncertain because they don't know what's going to happen politically, or they don't know what's going to happen when the supply line is going to get better. But one thing we do know is we still have a low supply problem, and we still have a demand, and we expect that demand to still be there in 2022. So just going back to finish up the video, we're going to compare 2019 residential sales, 2020, 21. Mainly, let's pay attention to blue and green because we all know the red, excuse me, not the red, the green is 2020. Now, you can see 2019 far outpaced where we were this year in the red. We've seen that in a lot of graphs, but now we've seen that we've sort of tracked back down with 2019, and we're staying just ahead of it on sales. A lot of this is due to the listings. I feel like we have a few more listings in a few more areas. We could get this red bar a little further up, but it does look like the sales are going to trend more in a normal market, and our listings are going to tag a little bit behind. And that's consistent with what we're seeing with these value gains. Lastly, what do we want to leave you with? What do you want to know? What do you need to know, I should say? If we're talking about inflation, you got to talk about interest rates because at some point they're going to go up, and that's what I wanted to talk about. Just pay attention, take our information, get your plan together. If you are thinking about buying, here's a projection of what some sources think that mortgage rates might do in 2022, looking at 3.6, average of 3.5, depending on who's projecting NAR or Fannie Mae, and then the third quarter going to about 3.55. Still a very good rate, but with inflation, we're going to have to see something like this kind of start to give. I do feel like our market is still performing very strong. There will be some changes; they just might be subtle, but we're going to keep watching this information and try to keep you as informed as we can. If you have any questions, reach out to us. Just let us know. If you're thinking about selling, if you're thinking about buying, or if you're just thinking about doing something to your home, and would that be a smart thing to do? Let us know. Have a great week. We'll follow up later this month with more of a national outlook, whereas those numbers are very focused on our Athens area real estate market. Have a great week. Thanks for giving me almost 8 minutes of your time.